All right, we've had some time to think and reflect. I'm going to give you a reason to feel optimistic about Oregon's season.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks, which is why, if you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch the show, which today is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. It fixes tired fast, just like that. With zero sugar, convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. Go to 5hourenergy.com, use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to get 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th. On one order, cannot be used with other promotions. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. I'll talk about Dillon Gabriel's performance later, and the standouts, if you're looking for something positive. I'm going to try to be as positive as I can today for what was easily the worst individual performance, though it was a win of the Dan Lanning era on Saturday against Idaho. That game never should have been close, and Oregon needed to pick up a 4th and 7, which they did with an offsides and a throw to Tez Johnson for a touchdown in order to beat the Vandals at home. It's a good FCS program. Shouldn't matter. Should not matter. Couple of reasons to be optimistic. And the first one is that Oregon's issue on Saturday was one thing. It's a big thing. But it's not as if I watched Oregon's team on Saturday and thought that the potential that we all saw on paper and that we talked about in the offseason, like it wasn't there, or that a bunch of players were disappointments, or that Dillon Gabriel stunk, or that all that. No, there was one issue. Just the one. It's a big issue. I'm not trying to downplay the severity of how bad the offensive line was on Saturday night at Autzen Stadium. But that was the one issue. If you fix that one issue, Oregon looks like the team we expected them to be. I have no qualms with the defense. Absolutely none. It wasn't perfect. You gave up a touchdown on a trick play, which never should have been allowed because Oregon should be able to get a yard, but 2 guys ran into each other and 1 guy tripped on the turf. That's what happened on the 4th and 1. I mean, that's not great. That's not an offense that is executing at the level that it needs to. But again, it came down to what? The offensive line. But defensively, got no issues. The defense, frankly, looked how I hoped it would. You had a defensive front that sacked their quarterback 4 times. They were 2 of 12 on 3rd down. They only scored 14 points. My prediction was 10. And if not for the tricky play on 3rd and goal, it might have been 10 points. But again, I expected them to score twice. They were held scoreless in the first half. Crazy stat. Oregon actually got outscored in the second half of that game by Idaho. Go figure. Who had that on their bingo card? I certainly did not. But Oregon's defense looked really good. The defensive line dominated the point of attack. Idaho could not run the ball. Most of their yards, they only had 217, came on 3 plays. They had a screen pass. Oregon needs to defend that better from the halfback side of things because they defended receiver screens mostly, I thought, pretty well. But again, those are little things that you expect to have out there in game 1. They had the screen pass, the trick play, and then a guy made a heck of a catch. I mean a heck of a catch. Brandon Johnson in good position. Jack Lane makes a good throw, and Hamper makes just a heck of a snag. You tip your cap sometimes and say, you know what, that's a really, really good play. Try and do that a bunch of times, because I saw another 50-50 ball thrown Brandon Johnson's way, and he wound up with the football. And he almost wound up with that football as well. So when I look at what the defense did on Saturday, it's exactly what I expected it to be. They were physical, they made it hard to move the ball, and there were really 3 plays, one of which never even should have been a snap for Idaho's offense, that allowed Oregon to give up some yards. Okay, that's fine. It was worse against Texas Tech last year. The penalties were an issue on defense. They gave up too many points, and the defense needed to make some improvements, and they did over the course of the year, week to week. It turns out that teams can get better on a week-to-week basis. But for Oregon offensively in this game, it wasn't good enough. Why? Because the offensive line was terrible. But that's the only thing that needs to get fixed. I watched Dillon Gabriel and thought, man, he's accurate. Dillon Gabriel wasn't perfect. I'll talk about him more later. He's not the problem. Okay? I looked at the running backs. Noah Whittington looks healthy. Jordan James looks great. Well, we already knew that. I look at the wide receivers. Hey, Kyler Casper had a big catch. Oh, look, Kenyon Sadiq was really good. Oh, the tight ends caught balls and the receivers caught passes. And okay, so that's exactly what we expected them to be. Every single unit except for the offensive line. That's it. So when I talk about Oregon's concern level, when I think about rather Oregon's concern level, it's noticeable. It's absolutely noticeable. I'm not coming on here and saying, oh, Oregon's going to be fine. Vegas has not lost confidence in the Ducks. They're still a 19.5-point favorite against Boise State on Saturday. If you feel like that's ridiculous and Oregon is overvalued and all that sort of stuff, go bet Boise State plus 19.5 if you would like. They gave up 50 points to Georgia Southern last week, or 49, 48, whatever it was. It was an entertaining football game, to be sure, and Ashton Genty went for 6 touchdowns. Oregon's got to be ready for that. But I don't have concerns about the defense. I am not worried about Atticus Sappington missing a 52-yard field goal. I don't think in my life Oregon's actually ever made a 50-plus yard field goal. Legit stat that I've loosely looked into. Don't think since I've been watching Oregon football anyone's ever made a 50-yarder. If you can think of one, by all means, let me know. But not too worried about that. He had enough leg to hit from 65 anyway. His kickoffs were awesome. The defense was really good. Everything except the offensive line looked exactly how I expected it to, and that unit just has to figure itself out. Is the concern level real? Yes, for 2 reasons. Number 1, don't care what FCS team it is, you should be able to push them around. And one thing that's been a hallmark of the Dan Lanning era that made Saturday so surprising and disappointing at the same time is that they have not played down to their competition level. You look at last season, you had tight games with Washington, and every other game other than Texas Tech, who was at least, a Big 12 team, Oregon blew them out. Oregon blew them out. And on Saturday, they didn't. That is the first time they have played all the way down to the level of an opponent that is significantly worse than them. Texas Tech, when they had a healthy quarterback, decent team. Oregon should not have been playing a game that was that close. Defense struggled particularly to begin the second half and had a couple sloppy penalties early on, but found a way to win the football game. And they found a way to win on Saturday. That's another important piece to remember. But the offensive line's got to be fixed. But the two reasons are you're playing a team that no matter what, you should be able to maul, and they didn't. That's the first thing. They couldn't get up for it, couldn't push guys around. I don't know. You tell me. Secondly, think about this. You lost the Remington Award winner for the best center in all of college football. How significant does that feel? I talked going into the year, I got a mailbag question about tone setters, and I listed Josh Connerly as a tone setter, and didn't feel like there were any tone setters along that offensive line. Marcus Harper's never been a bulldozer in the run game. Charlie Pickard, starting for the first time, thought he held up well. Snaps were good, and I didn't feel like he was a liability up there, but is he clearing pathways the way Jackson Powers Johnson did? No, he's clearly not. So the sooner Matthew Bedford can get back, probably the better. Poncho didn't have his best game. And Johnny Cornelius actually had the highest Pro Football Focus pass grade of any of them, but he allowed the strip sack of Dillon Gabriel and had 2 penalties. So clean up the offensive line, and everything else is there. That's the silver lining optimism. This bad game doesn't have to define Oregon's season. We could look back one day and very easily say, how did Oregon let Idaho hang around? Or we could look back and say that Idaho game was a sign of bad things to come for a massive disappointment. Maybe it's somewhere in between, but it feels like it'll be one of those 2 extremes. I certainly hope it's the former. Last year, albeit in bad weather conditions, but still comparable, Alabama played a 1-possession game with South Florida, an average American Conference team. Again, it's not as bad as this game from Oregon because this is an FCS opponent. But Alabama was in a slugfest early in the year as they were figuring out the quarterback position with South Florida. And by the end of the year, they beat Georgia in the SEC championship game. Teams can progress, but that progression has to show up pretty quickly along the offensive line. But that's the only place. So if you're looking for optimism, there it is. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter. Dillon Gabriel was not the problem. Not the problem. He also wasn't perfect, at least from my vantage point. That's coming up next. First, let's talk about 5-hour energy. Are you tired after lunch? That's not surprising. You know why? Studies show that more than 70% of us hit the wall after lunch. Let a 5-hour energy shot help you leap over that wall instead of crashing into it. And they have zero sugar, a convenient portable size, which makes it the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. And this time of year, I've got play-by-play. I've got shows to do. I'm doing more shows than I did in the off-season. I need to pick me up. And 5-hour energy, it's a perfect thing to do. Plus, their website's got flavors galore. Watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There's a flavor for everyone, so you want to go try them all. You can build a 12-pack. You can build a 24-pack. You choose the flavors, and it's delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5, and then hourenergy.com, and get some 5-hour energy product, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB, get 20% off your order, so that when the afternoon rolls around, and you're just, I don't want to do little 5-hour energy, boom, good to go. Locked on CFB, that's the code to get 20% off. This offer is only valid till September 30th on one order, cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go check out your energy boost. That's 5hourenergy.com today. I needed a 5-hour energy after recording that Saturday Night Reaction show, which I finished taping around 1-ish in the morning, local time. Anyway, but then I wouldn't have been able to sleep because 5-hour energy, as is in the name, keeps you going. Let's talk about Dillon Gabriel here. So, Dillon Gabriel has a stat line I never thought an Oregon quarterback would put up, and I never thought against an FCS opponent an Oregon quarterback would put up. So, 41 for 49. I mean, that's a Mike Leach, RIP to the late Mike Leach, whose wedding advice video I watched again the other day on the drive back from Austin with my dad, because it's just hilarious every single time I watch it. If you haven't, please go check it out. It's worth 3 minutes of your day. You will laugh. So, it looks like a Mike Leach offense to see 41 for 49, to where Oregon's run game was so incapable of being a factor until the final 2 drives that they had to throw the ball. And a lot of Mike Leach teams, a lot of air raid teams feel like they throw the ball to run the ball rather than run the ball to set up a play action pass. Or they throw the ball because, we can't really run it and we have pass protection specialists along the offensive line. And that's not the way Oregon looked. It wasn't perfect, but Dillon Gabriel fundamentally in this game was not the problem. Anyone who looks at what he did, I say routinely here on the show, stats are a starting point, not an end point. By no means do I look at him going 41 of 49 for 380 yards and 2 touchdowns and say, he played amazing. He was awesome. But was he good? Yeah, he was. Oregon might have scored before the half. The game might have been completely different from an emotion, from a vibe standpoint, if Dillon Gabriel isn't stripped at the end of the half. Oregon might go down, score a touchdown, lead 21-0, and you have a different sort of mojo coming out in the second half. Maybe. I'm just, it's a hypothetical, so it doesn't matter now. I'm just saying it might have been different. That was really the turning point. And then Oregon's offense coming out in the third quarter, being absolutely positively flat and a little bit conservative, and boom, you have a 3 and out, and suddenly you go, wow. Dan Lanning was probably just blasting into those guys in the halftime locker room, and they came out and they went 3 and out. Yikes. That was not a good sequence. But Gabriel's numbers were exactly what I expected of him. And I'll get to what I saw from the press box vantage point of what he can do better. And Tez Johnson even said after the game in his post-game interview that he felt like Dillon Gabriel was a little bit nervous or a little uneasy. I think was the word that he used, or hesitant, uneasy, just not quite fully settled in. That's kind of what he looked like at times. He wasn't always letting it rip, but when he did, he looked really good. And when he had time to set his feet and throw, boy, his arm looked lively. He was delivering the ball accurately. That throw to Trayshawn Holden over the middle, threaded it through a gnarly tight needle, and he got it done. And when he made good throws, he looked exactly like the guy that I've talked about this offseason. He is a really accurate passer. He's not going to have the biggest, most NFL caliber arm. So sometimes he has to thread the needle a little bit more than other guys would because he can't zip it in there. And so the windows get tighter. But guess what? He's really accurate. He's really accurate. Oregon was, I think, 7 of 16 on third down in this game. he made a couple of really good throws on third down. He made some good decisions. He made some good reads. Who was his favorite go-to guy on fourth down and third down? Tez Johnson. No surprise there whatsoever. That was what I thought coming into the year. I think Tez is going to have a monster campaign. Monster campaign. But you had a lot of quick hitters. You had a lot of short passes, and Gabriel executed a lot of that. And the downfield component should certainly come into play. Oregon did not have a play of over 30 yards in this game, which is not acceptable from a ground game standpoint. You should have had a couple big carries. It's also especially unacceptable from a pass game standpoint. They had some plays over 15 to 20 yards, and it looked great. I mean, that throw to Kyler Casper in the first half, number one, it felt like a throw 2 years in the making, or more like a catch 2 years in the making from Kyler Casper, who played a lot more than I thought he would. But I think that Dillon Gabriel met my expectations. He met my expectations. He was accurate. He got the ball out on time. There were plenty of quick hitters, and I didn't see a huge, massive mistake. What I did see from him were a couple of opportunities missed to push the ball down the field. So last year, there was this narrative, of course, around Bo Nix. He's captain check down. He doesn't push it down the field. He's, of course, Denver's starting quarterback against my Seahawks on Sunday, and I think he's going to thrive in that Sean Payton offense. And Bo Nix, more than capable, has the NFL arm talent, of course, as a first-round pick, to push the ball down the field wasn't always what the offense called for. So I wonder how much of this is Will Stein being in these quarterbacks' ears and saying, if you don't love it right away, don't force a downfield shot or take the checkdowns. And look, I'm all for taking yardage that a defense gives you. There were opportunities to take more yards. So 3 passes in particular where Gabriel missed an opportunity to push the ball down the field. I don't expect him to see every open receiver. One image that pops into my head was Aaron Rodgers in a game many years ago when he was on the Packers. He's looking at the tablet on the sideline, and he missed a guy who was open, and then he takes the tab and he throws it down. I think he broke it. That happens. When it happens routinely, though, you start to wonder, okay, why is he missing these guys, and is he able to make that adjustment? So 3 plays in particular. First one, before Atticus Sappington's field goal, there was a 3rd and goal. Don't remember exactly where it was from. Idaho brought a blitz. Evan Stewart over the middle was very open for a touchdown, but Gabriel had decided he was going to T-Ferg on the out route. He picked up 5 to 6 yards, made a short field goal even shorter. Sappington makes it. Okay, missed a guy there. Then on the next red zone possession that led to, or another one, I don't remember if it was the next one specifically, though I think it was, when Oregon got down and eventually had the 4th and 7 before the offsides, the Tez Johnson touchdown, the 3rd and 7 play was thrown to Terrence Ferguson, and Kenyon Sadiq was open. He missed him. Okay. There was another play, forget exactly when it was, where Gabriel took an underneath pass that I think ended up working out fine, but Tez Johnson on a longer developing corner route was running into open space, never got the ball. So, how do those sorts of downfield shots that were missing from Oregon's offense get resolved? And those are just the ones that I noticed. There might have been other ones. I don't have access to the all-22 film, but up in the press box, I watched those plays develop, and I saw those guys come open, and then the ball went elsewhere on those 3 occasions. Again, I don't expect a guy to be perfect. These plays do, however, have to show up as a function of Oregon's offense. For all the talk about Bo Nix was captain check down and whatnot last year, they still had the ability to create explosive plays, to push the ball down the field. You think about, he had a long touchdown. He had a couple long touchdowns to Tez Johnson, or long pass plays to Tez Johnson as well. Now, Tez is, of course, incredible with yards after the catch. Tez is a faster Tyler Lockett. Tez is great. That's wide receiver 1. I don't think anybody is really arguing that at this point in time. And he showcased that on Saturday. He was clutch when Oregon needed him the most. But those sorts of plays have to be there. He did take a downfield shot earlier in the game to Evan Stewart. Stewart was kind of there, hadn't created as much separation as I'd expect him to against Idaho's defensive backs, but certainly that ball was not the best deep ball that Dillon Gabriel's ever thrown. So I don't think Gabriel was perfect, and he missed those opportunities I'll reiterate, though, he's 41 of 49. Okay, like, that's over 80% completion. That's really good. Really, really good. And he did make some good throws. And he was accurate on third downs when he needed to be. Wasn't always perfect. What I do wonder is if the downfield shots weren't getting the time from him mentally to develop because the offensive line wasn't protecting him the way they should have. I wonder if that was a component. So those plays are just a couple of examples of things that I noticed of missed a guy there. Like, could have had that opportunity, could have taken that shot and didn't. Why? Maybe he hasn't fully settled into the offense. Maybe he didn't trust the offensive line. Maybe he just didn't see him and made bad reads. But the explosive passing game has to be there for Oregon. It has to show up eventually. Can it? Yes. Will it? Time will tell. But even though that component was missing from Dillon Gabriel's day, I again go back to, was he the problem? Nope. I've got no issue with Dillon Gabriel other than the downfield passing component. He was not the problem on Saturday. It all comes back to the offensive line. The play action pass wasn't as lethal. Oregon couldn't run the ball, and Gabriel didn't always have the time and maybe didn't trust he was going to get the time to push it down the field. Everything that you didn't like about Saturday against Idaho comes back to the offensive line. There were some things that were good. It wasn't all terrible. It was just, the overall result. I didn't exactly love it. But there were standouts that should give you some hope and optimism going into this week's matchup with Boise State. And they're coming up next. Hey, Locked On Ducks fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up about a brand new mobile game I think you're going to love, Ultimate College Football HC. In this amazing game simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your program to glory. You get to recruit, you oversee training camps, you hire your staff, you handle scholarships. It's all in your hands, and you call plays. So everything that you do will shape the future and legacy of your program. You can be the head coach of the Ducks, and guess what? Ultimate College Football HC is completely free. Has no ads, 100% playable offline. You take it with you anywhere that you go. It's always available in your pocket. And of course, we have a special offer for Locked On Ducks fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to get a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk because it will get your team off to a strong start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. Before I get to the standouts from Saturday, I did want to mention a comment from Dan Lanning in his post-game press conference. Someone asked him what was said to the team in the locker room, and he said, that's for the guys in there. And, if we wanted everybody else to hear it, then we'd have you in there. And to some people, that came off as snarky, rude, whatever. I'm here to tell you, I have no issue with the remark whatsoever. If a reporter asks that sort of question, and it's not an unfair question to ask, it's not ridiculous, out of bounds, insane. When you are dealing with head coaches in an environment like that after a horrible performance, do not expect him to be in a good mood. I don't want him to be in a good mood. If I'd asked that sort of question, gotten that response, and felt attacked, I'd rather feel that than feel that he didn't go in there and lay into the guys in the locker room. Like, as an Oregon fan, that's what I want him to do. So for him to say, that's for the guys in the locker room, that translation, he yelled at him a lot. He's not happy, and he's got to fix the motivation level because it wasn't there for the offensive line. Once that gets fixed, everything else can fall into place, and Oregon can achieve its goals. But that has to be fixed, and it's a major question right now. So, wanted to start with that. But few individual standouts from Saturday's game. Something I enjoy doing in the shows that I do during the season. We're looking at the guys that really, really popped to me and had a big game. Let's start with Brandon Johnson. The interception, a pass breakup. I don't know if he actually got credit for the pass breakup, but led to a fourth down stop when he was in good coverage. He almost wrestled that ball away on the long pass completion from Lane to Hamper and made it an interception. I think it probably went down as a simultaneous catch, which favors the offense. But I thought Brandon Johnson looked like the best nickel Oregon has had since Javon Holland. He could cover. He looked like he can tackle. He was everywhere, and he was making impact plays, and that has been sorely lacking on Oregon's defense, and I thought he was the best individual defensive player outside of the trenches. If you're talking linebackers and secondary, I think Brandon Johnson was pretty clearly the best player on the field for Oregon defensively. Mateo Uyunglele had a couple of sacks. Tatum Tuioti, incredibly disruptive. I thought Harmon and Caldwell, the defensive tackles, did a good job as well, particularly in the fourth quarter. But Tuioti and Mateo, they were all over the place. And that was really, really fun to see. So I really liked what I saw from the defensive line and Brandon Johnson. I'll get to I'll stick with defense here and then go to the offensive standouts that I like the most. So a couple of you asked me about the linebackers and why were the rotations like this and that. And, in the first half, we saw a lot of Tyler Turner at safety. And then Tysheem Johnson played more in the second half. I wonder, this is speculative on my part. I am guessing here, just want to make that very clear. I'm wondering if there wasn't an in-house suspension for Tysheem Johnson, because I don't remember seeing him in the first half. Tyler Turner was out there running with the first defense, and he had a couple of not great moments, but overall did fine. And then Tysheem was out there more in the second half opposite Kobe Savage. So I wonder about that. But on the linebacking front, Jeffrey Bossa, I think got dinged up during the game and then went back in during the fourth quarter. At least when I was tracking his playing time, that's how it kind of went down. I don't think there's a major injury there, at least not that I have heard or read. And one of you asked me about the lack of impact plays from the linebackers, and linebackers can kind of be a thankless job of sorts because primarily they're going to make plays in run support or tackling receivers on the run. And it's not always going to, you don't always get the chance because you're only blitzing every so often. You don't always get the chance to make impact plays or have a sexy stat sheet. So I didn't think the linebackers were some major liability. They weren't, absolutely wowing me and they were all over the place. But no, I think we know what to expect. Justin Jacobs was out there, saw a lot of Devin Jackson though, not surprising. Coaches have had a lot of good things to say about Devin Jackson coming into this season. Bryce Betcher was the starting linebacker alongside Jeffrey Bossa. Didn't see that one coming. Maybe it had to do with an injury to Justin Jacobs. I don't know. I don't know. A couple rotations, Tyler Turner, didn't expect to see him there. Bryce Betcher with the first unit, didn't expect that either. Dante Manning starting at the number 2 corner spot, had a pretty nice game, but wasn't at all surprised to see him there necessarily. So those are my thoughts on the linebacker situation. But last 2 standouts here that I wanted to get to and drop your individual standouts if you think I'm overlooking somebody and I can talk about it on tomorrow's show. Tez Johnson, of course, 12 catches, over 80 yards, 2 touchdowns, did a lot of damage in yards after contact, and his ability to make guys miss, his feel for where defenders are and how to set them up is just chef's kiss. I mean, we've seen this against every level of opponent. Wasn't surprised that his best stuff was working against Idaho. And anytime, this is something that actually is going to have to evolve for Oregon offensively throughout the course of the year. When you have a crucial situation, teams are going to catch on and watch film and see, hey, Dillon Gabriel is going to look for number 15. Who's that next guy going to be to step up? Is it Evan Stewart? Could be. He had a fine game. Is it Trayshawn Holden? Is it Gary Bryant when he gets back? Don't know. But Tez Johnson, absolute standout. And then Kenyon Sadiq. How about Kenyon Sadiq, man? It wasn't just talk from Will Stein to say, we got to get him more involved. Well, he was more involved. All 3 tight ends caught passes, by the way. Sign me up for that. The guys are playmakers. Patrick Herbert, solid. T-Ferg, stud. Going to be in the NFL. Kenyon Sadiq, as T-Ferg told me in an interview earlier this year, might be the best out of all of them, or has the potential to be the best of all of them. But pop passes to Kenyon Sadiq, seeing him run routes, push the ball down the field. I thought that Sadiq, from a pass-catching standpoint, showcased why he's had some Oregon fans excited, myself included. I thought that was really, really fun to see. And the potential that he has is just different from every other tight end because he brings a different athletic profile at the tight end position. He's kind of a hybrid wide receiver or like a slightly bigger Trayshawn Holden. But you can do a lot with Kenyon Sadiq. I love seeing Kyler Casper get a big catch as well and using that big frame. Like, that's what he brings to the table. And, does Casper continue to see an extended run? I'd love for him to. I think his potential is immense. I've been a fan of his ever since he was first committed to Oregon. We did not really see Jurion Dickey in this game. I didn't check to see if he got a bunch of snaps, but he did not record a reception in this one. But it's a loaded wide receiver room. Thought we would see more guys in there. We were supposed to. Alas, we did not. But again, drop your individual standouts below in the YouTube comments. I will see you next time. Thanks for making this your first listen. Go make Locked On College Football your second. I do host over there. Appreciate everyone listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.